Banks and customers could save $39 trillion a year by moving to Ripple and XRP. I'm going to go through this information with you. It's all fact-based. Took me a while to put all this together. If you get any value from this video, guys, please hit like. If you're not subscribed, think about doing that. Let's go ahead and get into this. This is going to be a ton of fact-based information for you. This is the reason that I am so bullish and pumped up about Ripple and XRP. And I think after you watch this video, you're going to better understand how much money seriously can be saved by using blockchain and crypto. Let me go ahead and play this.
Faster, more transparency and greater access. And I think one of the big questions here is, what happens with the correspondent banking model? I think the role that the banking system plays is crucial in the global economy, and I think that will continue. But the sort of traditional model of, pre-funding accounts, for liquidity purposes, nostro accounts. I mean, it's proven that part of the correspondent banking model is not needed.
That part of the correspondent banking model is not needed, right? The nostro vostro, locking up money all around the world because you're sending payments. You need to have, if you're sending money to the UK, you need to have dollars in one account and pounds in another account. And this has really caused issues that banks are low on liquidity because all of this value is locked up globally. Now, let's better understand how much of the world of the FX market does Ripple cover right now. The number actually might shock you. It's extremely high. Let me play this for you.
And since 2016, we've helped serve hundreds of customers, allowing them access to over 70 different payout markets, which represents over 90% of the global FX market.
Ripple covers 90% of the global FX market. Keep that in mind in the numbers I'm about to go through with you. It really is going to blow your socks off.
And in that time, as Monica mentioned yesterday, we processed over 27 million transactions, representing approximately $50 billion in notional value. And the best part of this is it's all without requiring customers to pre-fund payments.
It's all the customers, all without requiring customers to pre-fund payments. This would unlock about $27 trillion back to the banks, which they very much need right now. How much money is moved around per day in FX markets, right? So to better understand this, the current information they have is about $7.5 trillion a day. This precise data is, FX markets over the counter, meaning transactions occur electronically via phone, brokers, banks, or other participants. And the average transaction cost is around 2 to 3%. So now that we better understand this, the exact number of daily transactions in the foreign exchange market is not, because I wanted to better understand how many transactions are happening per day in the FX market. It really didn't know. This information is harder to find. And so we used an average of 6 to 7.5 million transactions per day because the average transaction per these banks is about $1 million, right? They're not just sending like $50 or $100. They're sending a large amount to cover a bunch of different payments at one time. So, the current XRP ledger, this data says 1.8 million transactions per day. Transactions 6 to 7.5 million transactions per day, excuse me. So now that we have this data, we can better understand how much this is all going to cost. Using the information above of 7.5 trillion per day in the FX market and 3% fees on 7.5 million transactions per day, how much does that total and how much does it come out to? So if you use all of this information, right, 7.5 trillion a day, 7.5 million transactions, average cost is 3%. Here is your number of $225 billion per day. All right. Now, using the number above, going at 1%, how much is that? So the high end was 3%. I wanted to better understand what is the lowest amount of money that would be, would cost to send all this value per day. And the answer here is $75 billion, not $225 billion. So you can see the savings there. All right. Using the information above, right? Let's see if we use the XRP ledger for the same FX transfers, and it only costs 0.0002, right? 0.0002, cost per payment. How much cheaper would it cost per day to have the XRP ledger for global transactions? The answer, ladies and gentlemen, is $1,500 per day. It is $1,500, not 75 billion or 225 billion. It's $1,500. I literally was shocked when this math came through. My jaw opened up. My wife was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, holy smokes. That is a lot of savings, right? Here you go. FX trading volume, 7.5 trillion. Number of transactions, 7.5 million. Current cost, right? 1%, 75 billion a day. Cost per transaction per the XRP ledger. Here is that, right? Here's the cost. Number of transactions, $1,500 per day, right? Savings is 75. You have $75 billion, right? 75,000, 75 million, 75 billion, $1,500 a day. You save 74 billion, 990 million, 998,500 bucks per day. If you did this 365 days, it is $27 trillion a year that you would save by using the XRP ledger. Literally $1,500 per day times 365 days a year. This is like 500 grand, $547,000, give or take, something like that. It is an insane amount of money. And then I said, how much value moves around the planet? So I wanted to better understand the stock market. Here's some numbers on the stock market. They do about $200 billion a day on major exchanges on the NYSE and the NASDAQ. And, I was trying to better understand what are the fees associated with this. Here's the typical fees, $5 to $15 per trade on stocks and ETFs. Commission fees trading. Many brokers have different fees. Typical fees, $100 per trade. Depending on your portfolio manager, average cost could be 1% to 2% of the total transaction. And so, here's more information if you want to pause it. And then here, I said, using the information above of $200 billion in volume per day and 2% fee on all these transactions, how much does that come out to? Basically $4 billion a day. And I said, if you use the XRP ledger instead, how much money would it cost? It would cost $400 per day instead of $4 billion per day. This is why moving the stock market onto the XRP ledger, that could send the XRP price into the thousands. It could also allow trading 24/7, 365 for an insane amount of money, low amount of money, opposed to how much money is really being charged to these customers per day. This is like, think about this. If banks switch and they start saving billions with a B per day, they can offer better services to their customers. They could lower all of these fees and they could still make a killing. They could still make a ton of money. And the reason banks are wanting to move to new systems, usually outdated systems, messaging issues, different banks use different messaging. That's why ISO is coming in. Speed, transaction costs, liquidity benefits, adoption, regulatory perspective, security concerns, upgrades. These are all things that banks are thinking about 24/7. Ripple can come in and literally set your bank up to move value instantaneously in as little as 3 weeks. That is the fastest time I've heard somebody from Ripple saying that's how quickly they got one of their banking customers up. It usually takes 2 to 3 months, which is still a low amount compared to what it normally takes 6 to 12 to 18 months usually to set up a new system inside of a bank. This is also going to play into tokenization and FX. Let me play this.
Well, I agree. I think using an example of custody, with Ripple Custody, formerly known as Medico, it's working with large institutions and making sure that they can scale. We have tremendous coverage of some of the largest financial institutions in Europe, DBS, HSBC, BBVA, Switzerland. And, they're trusting us to come in, not only provide custody, but allow them to tokenize and pull it together in one package. So scale is going to happen when some of this fragmentation that we talk about, it kind of is removed. We almost want this to be kind of boring. It should be really clear. It's not like taking a front seat and you spend half the time you meet with a customer just explaining the technology and why they shouldn't be worried about it, but you're really focusing on the benefits, the real world utility that the solution brings. And without that, it's going to be, it's a slog. And I do feel it's getting better. Again, the amount of inbound requests we're getting to meet with large institutions around tokenization products is just astounding vis-a-vis a year ago. And I think being able to again, bring those things together in a very kind of frictionless way is what's really going to allow the real scale to thrive.
Basically, Ripple is getting overwhelmed with requests from big financial institutions to work with Ripple on tokenization of assets, custody, those type of things. Remember, Ripple is one of the best technologies globally for cross-border payments, tokenization, custody of assets. They are setting it all up. Let me go ahead and get this to you so we know how much it costs per transaction. I wanted to understand how much actual money is moving around the planet per day. Here we go. So this information is about cross-border payments. I'm not going to go into this too much real quickly. I want to get to this. Okay. So here, let's just verify this, right? How much money moves around the planet per day? According to various sources, it's estimated at $21 trillion. Okay. Using the number of $21 trillion moved per day, if the average cost, well, you know what? Let me go through some of this because we need to better understand how much fees are involved in this. So I do apologize. Let's back up. How much money per day in cross-border payments? This came up with 200 something billion, per day. So it says Swift processes $100 billion in cross-border transactions. The time it takes, JP Morgan moves $10 trillion per day. And then global context, cross-border payments could go to 250 trillion by 2027. It's basically $685 billion a day. And then what is the average cost per transactions these banks pay? So the average cost of these transactions, Swift transfers can be 25 to 50 bucks on average. They can also have some intermediate bank fees. Exchange rates and markups is 2 to 5%. Global average cost 6 to 7% of a transactions, and as well as some other fees down here associated with that. So if you're sending $10,000, if you have 6 to 7% fees, that's $600 to $700 out of your $10,000 that the bank would take to move that value, which is a lot of money that you're missing out on. And I said, if the XRP ledger is used to do these cross-border payments and the average cost is 0.0002, how much money would that save these banks and customers? And so it gave me this information. Cross-border payments totaling 290 trillion annually by 2030, approximately 796 billion per day. Current average cost per transaction is 2 to 5%. XRP transaction cost, literally this is going to save you. So this is basically talking about daily fees on 796 billion. The average fees are basically $27 billion per day. If you used XRP, you would be looking at $159,000 per day instead of $27 billion per day. Let that sink in a little bit here. Let's do some quick math here. Let me bust out my calculator if my phone works. It does. So 27, let's go 27 times 365. You're looking at $9.8 trillion per year, right? That is just astronomical. So here is the juice. Using the number of $21 trillion moved per day in daily payments, if we use the average cost for the bank and compare it to the average cost for an XRP payment of 0.0002, what is the information? So calculate the potential savings. Global average cost of sending remittances, 6.25%. For larger B2B transactions, here's some other information. And it says calculation, 21 trillion. Current system costs $105 billion per day. This is 5% of 21 trillion. And then if you used XRP, you would be looking at 4.9 million per day instead of $105 billion, right? And then, so here is your total annual savings. If you used XRP instead of the current banking system, right, you would save $38.32 trillion per year. Please put that into perspective. This is an insane amount of money. Insane amount of money. Think of what your bank could do with this type of savings. They could pass it on to you and me. And this money, instead of going to banks, would come back to us, right? Because we're not spending as much money to move the same amount of value, right? It's incredible. It's incredible, man. Like, here is 38 trillion. And remember, we did the FX market. This was what, 27 trillion? Literally, I mean, 27 trillion and 38 trillion, right? 48, 58, and then you have 7. You're basically looking at $65 trillion per day. Excuse me, $65 trillion per year you could save by using XRP. Just, it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling.
In March of 2023, there was a report by the IMF titled Trust Bridges and Money Flows, a digital marketplace to improve cross-border payments. And interestingly, on page 23, they mention 2 digital assets. and that's XRP and XLM.
The Bank for International Settlements publishes their money flower. And there is a small space in that money flower for those private cryptocurrencies. So I agree with you that the winners of this have already been chosen.
The winners of this have already been chosen.
I believe so.
Right. And I think that you just named the two that are most likely that. And I think also Wall Street's totally adopted Bitcoin.
All right, Brad Garlinghouse, like most people that work 9 to 5, the average person, a lot of you watch this channel, you usually get paid 1 to 2 times per month because it is extremely expensive for a business to do payroll. If your business moved to blockchain, you could be paid by the job or per day or whatever it is, right? Some of us go out and we do different jobs during the day, and those jobs pay us, $50, $100, whatever it is per day. And then some of us go to work for, 8 to 9 hours, and we make X amount of money per day. And then on the 15th or the 1st, we usually get a paycheck, right? Now, what if you could be paid every single day? Would that have an impact on your life? I think for the average person who lives paycheck to paycheck, that could be that could supercharge their life, right? Because sometimes the average person can't cover a $600 or $800 medical cost, right? A lot of people live day to day, right? And so if you're able to use or get paid every day, that could greatly impact your life, where you won't have to go get a loan or do these types of things that normal people have to do to survive.
For I believe you get paid once a month. In the United States, you get paid once every 2 weeks. Has everybody thought about why you get paid once a month or once every 2 weeks? It comes down to the friction of payments. And if we can remove the friction of payments, why can't you get paid every day? Or even more crazily, why don't you get paid every hour or every second? You could have a stream of value showing up in your whatever repository of value. Now, why you need to get paid every second, I'm not sure. But I do think there's a lot of dynamics that have been built around getting paid every 2 weeks or getting paid every month. And as we remove the friction of payments and make that dramatically easier, I think you're going to see secondary and tertiary effects that are very difficult to predict, just like we couldn't have predicted Grab 20 years ago.
Imagine getting paid every single hour. Like, that is the cost savings you're going to find. Now, a lot of people mix up, like, what is the XRP ledger? What is Ripple? Just the reason banks are basically going to be nodes on the network, right? The IRS is a node on the network, and a lot of schools actually run validator nodes as well. And then, all operates at almost free transaction cost per second. Transactions, validations occur globally. Decentralized consensus offers exceptionally fast, low energy, high scalability, and will grow with emerging quantum computing capabilities. Fully supports XRP token and issuance of custom private tokens, sovereign currencies, commodities, and unlimited tokenized forms of value. This could be where the price of XRP could jump dramatically into the hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, if you start bringing on $50 trillion, $100 trillion worth of value. Now, a lot of you might think that is a lot of money. Over the next 5 to 10 years, the best technologies will have the most impact on all of these markets. And if you ask any of these financial institutions who is on your list of people to call when you want to upgrade your systems to blockchain, Ripple is going to be on that list. They might not always be selected, but you're damn sure that bank is going to look at them, okay? And then, derivatives, that is a whole nother game, right? I need to do the math on derivatives. I didn't do it for this video. I should have done it for this video. I wasn't thinking. I was so pumped up to do this. But listen, Robinhood and Bitstamp, they are making moves towards global adoption and derivatives on the XRP ledger. It's a minute 27. This explains a little bit. Let me play this for you, right? This is much bigger than I expected due to the size and reach of these top 30 global central banks tapping into Bitstamp to offer cryptocurrency services to their clients. So this is global, this is not central banks. This is 30 of the biggest banks, period.
Introducing Bitstamp as a service. Our on-demand solution lets you give your customers access to crypto markets from inside your existing apps and products. So instead of moving money to other companies to buy crypto, your customers can take care of all their crypto exchange needs with you. When you accelerate your market entry with the world's #1 crypto exchange, you'll benefit in 3 ways. Gain competitive advantage, generate new revenue streams, and get ready for future growth to stay ahead of the market. Just connect to our API and add our buttons to your apps. You'll get our institutional-grade processes and infrastructure, like matching orders, ensuring safe custody, and KYC for smooth signups, all without losing the flexibility you need. Plus, more than 50 global licenses and registrations mean full compliance. So you can focus on giving your customers a great experience.
Guys, listen, if you haven't hit like on this video, what else can I do to get that like from you? Please. We're not finished. There's a few other things I need to talk about with you. The rise of RLUSD is going to play a big impact on all of this information I just went over. Not every single time a bank is going to want to use XRP in their payment flow. A lot of banks are going to want to use stablecoins. And if you've listened to people in the Trump administration, they're talking about how important stablecoins are going to be towards this new financial system. And if Ripple has the highest regulated stablecoin on the planet, banks are obviously going to come in and use that. Let me play this.
Because this is absolutely shocking. Out of nowhere, RLUSD's volume skyrocketed 2,000% and is now doing 600 million worth of volume. Just a couple hours ago, this was close to 20 to 30 million, which was already extremely high and very successful. But to see it at 600 million this early is absolutely insane. What we're likely going to see is a huge amount of volume shift away from USDC and Tether as Ripple turns on their products using their own stablecoin RLUSD. Now, just for a comparison to show you guys how good this is, PayPal's stablecoin, which is a very successful stablecoin, don't get me wrong, is only doing 22 million in volume right now.
All right, you guys understand, you get the picture of how much of an impact this can have. And we come back to Bank of America. Why? Because Bank of America is the second largest bank in the US, okay, behind JP Morgan Chase. And they have trillions of dollars in assets. They move trillions of dollars per day. Very important to understand what an impact that Ripple and XRP will have on Bank of America customers. Let me play it.
Another one you like is Ripple. You said it is the coin to be looking at right now.
Absolutely.
Why?
Okay, so Ripple actually was the second largest coin prior to the SEC's investigation of them. They did this really weird lawsuit against them, and basically the Ripple's going to be the track that everything's going to be running on in the future. So they created their own stable coin right now.
Okay.
And Bank of America, like I said, they were doing 100% of their internal transactions. They've got 83 different patents on it, and there's some incredible stuff that's going to be coming out. So,
are you not entertained? What else can I do to show you the impact of Ripple and XRP on the global financial system? You are going to save tens of trillions of dollars per year. Why wouldn't you move? It's faster, it's cheaper, it's smarter, it's more elegant. I mean, what other things do you need to say, hey, you know what? My bank can use that. Here's the story. If you made it to the end, you get this story. I was driving my wife to work today, and she works at a bank here in Honolulu. And I asked her, I started talking about this video that I was going to create for you guys. And she started, telling me what it takes to send a international payment. So she said that sometimes that they use Citibank, right? So a lot of banks use HSBC, Citibank, JP Morgan because they have the most banking rails globally. So they were sending a payment into like France or Europe or something like that. So once they kind of put on all the information and they send the payment out, it goes to Citibank. They can't check on where the payment is, what bank it's at, what's the, how long left in the process. The customer and the bank that originally sent the wire has no information. They cannot pull any information. They can't call Citibank. They don't have a system that works with it. It's done, right? So that takes 2 or 3 days. If the payment doesn't make it, it'll go back into the customer's account, and then they got to start over and do it again if like something was wrong or a number was wrong. Okay. But they get charged a percentage from Citibank to move that payment. What I'm trying to say is this: that all of these banks are interconnected by the current system, right? If we could supercharge the new system into the current system, what do you think that would do for everyday people as well as the global financial system? Literally, you unlock $27 trillion that's parked in all of these banks and financial institutions around the world. That is going to greatly impact whatever communities those banks are in. Think about it. If a bank comes into, a few $100 billion because they have all this money locked up, or $1 billion, whatever it is, they can start loaning out more money to customers, to businesses, to students, to whatever it is. That will create more growth and GDP in whatever countries that money goes back into. This is why it's so important to be on the tip of the spear for, new technologies that banks and financial institutions are going to have. You stick to me on this channel, I will give you all of the best info, guys. I love you so much. Thank you for being here.